Eric Capstick is the lens of Yankee Stadium and Madison Square Garden. For over 20 years, he's been the in-venue videographer for the Yankees, Knicks, and Rangers, capturing the greatest moments of New York sports history and presenting them to fans around the world. Eric, thanks so much for taking the time.
It's my pleasure to be here with you, Avery. Thank you.
It's been great to get to know you over the years, always clamoring for airtime on the Yankee Stadium Jumbotron and Garden Vision at MSG. And you've always been good to me and my family. And I push him more also into the Knicks. And after last night, that was pretty exciting. NBA Cup win, first
Yeah,
title in
that was super exciting. I actually
2023.
was working the Ranger game, so I missed the first half
Oh, I'm sorry.
and the beginning of
That
the
was
third quarter. But wow, like I was impressed at how resilient they were because the Spurs were turning it on. Wemby was draining deep threes, looking like this stroke that would never miss. And we kept answering. I mean, guys off the bench, in particular. I mean, and I don't know, OG was amazing. Kolek made a lot of big plays. Clarkson hit two huge threes. Josh Hart hit a huge three. Jalen was Jalen, well-deserved MVP, and he was great with his post-game interview, calling the boys out.
Yeah, yeah. I think the best part about that win, and they just made an announcement that they're not going to do a banner. And I was clamoring for a banner. I don't want to go off script too much. I don't want to get too much into this. I
Yeah, yeah,
wanted a
yeah,
banner.
yeah.
I wanted a banner, but then if they're really so focused on winning that championship and that's what it's going to take, then I'm cool with that too.
Well, me too. I see there was a lot of talk like, oh, people didn't want the Knicks to win the NBA Cup because then they wouldn't win the title. And I'm like, what is that? What kind of logic is that? Of course you want to win.
Yeah,
And it's a win or go home game, and that's good. It's like playoff like experience. I thought it was a good thing. The
yeah.
downside was that if they weren't in the semifinal or the final, then they would have had a week to practice, and there hadn't been any practice time, blah, blah, blah. But the players wanted to win, and they won.
What's better practice than going up against the best
Right.
teams that you're going to face at this point in the year and the highest stakes
Yeah.
possible?
And I thought Cat was great too. Mitchell was amazing. I like our depth a lot this year. And it's exciting to see a guy like Tyler Kolek break out in the NBA Cup because he had been a part of the rotational year, but not all the time, and he hadn't been as impactful as he was in this NBA Cup. So that's thrilling.
Yeah,
He's a great guy out of Marquette. I know him a little bit from the Big East tournaments we do at the
right,
Garden.
right.
And
Makes
he's a
sense.
real
Yeah,
friendly guy. His dad was there, Spike was there. I loved how Mike Brown said to the crowd, "Feels like we're in New York." And they roared. It was great.
the
It
only
was
guy missing was Ben Stiller. He was in Hawaii.
Was he? Oh, he was in Hawaii.
That's what
Yeah,
they said.
I saw him. My mom lives on West 10th Street, and there's a Cinderella, right? I think it's called Cinderella. The fancy, the market. And I was gonna work Knicks later that night. I'm wearing my Knicks jacket, walking down Sixth Avenue, and Ben Stiller walks into the Cinderella, but he didn't notice me. He had tunnel vision, but
But he
he's
would
like,
know because you're right there on the court.
yeah, I mean, I was just processing it. He was a little ahead of me, but good dude and hardcore fan. One of the things I like about him the most is that he's always there for the start of the third quarter. Half the people, like in like Celebrity Row and down near the court, are still like,
Yeah,
hobnobbing and
they're down in the
their
tunnel.
food and drinks. But he's there to watch basketball. Spike
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Spike's that way too.
But I want to start with your career journey. So you said you've been doing Yankee games with the in-stadium videography since 1998. Obviously, 1998 was a record-setting year for the Yankees, so I'm sure that was a very exciting introduction for you. And I want to know what led you to become the lens of Yankee Stadium and eventually Madison Square
All
Garden
right.
as you
So
reach this point in your journey.
So at that time, I was working for Columbia University, the College of Physicians and Surgeons, doing like surgical video. and corporate video, shooting, editing, producing, writing, doing budgets, stuff like that. And sometimes we would do shoots for C-SPAN. Usually they were one camera shoots, but occasionally they would be bigger events. And for those, we used a couple of guys who had a company called Triad Video. And I got to know those guys. That was Jim Shutterly and Louis Zalesnik, and we got to be friendly. And I learned that they worked for the Yankee Stadium scoreboard. And I'm like, dude, anything ever opens up, let me know. And in '98, they had an opening. So, and fortunately, my boss at Columbia, Jeff Schmolowitz, was great. He's a huge Yankee fan, and he gave me a lot of flexibility so I could make the games, because I think that maxim that availability is the best ability or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. So you
Yeah.
got to take advantage of those opportunities when you have them. And for me, it was special just because it was the Yankees, and I was a lifelong Yankee fan. And I'm a lefty with a live arm. I figured I should have been like, but I never got to play Little League. I played basketball. But anyway, so I have sort of
You
unrequited.
say as you stretch your arms. We're
Yeah.
lefty with a live arm.
Well, you gotta stay loose. I stretch all the time. I'm 63 years old. If I didn't stretch, I'd be shrinking by now. I got in '98 when that opportunity happened. And then aside from one, I mean, I was fully committed to it the whole way. But at one point, I did take another job for pseudo.com, which was an early internet broadcast company. And I was directing a daily show and stuff. And so, um, I couldn't do all the games. And so, but I did still like 70% or something. But aside from that, I've been, there almost all the time. I don't know if I've had a perfect season, but I've been close.
That first opportunity, how did it feel? Was it thrilling?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I remember like they had, and this is the old stadium, and they had like a trailer outside that was kind of a finished trailer. And that was like sort of the office you would go into to get your ID and stuff. And I had an appointment with a guy named Doyle Martin, and Joe Palia was his assistant, and they interviewed me. But yeah, just to even get the ID tag printed and then to go in. This is the player's entrance. I think it was gate 4, the old stadium. And as you walk in, there's we call it a vom, but a chute that went out to the field. And like, if it's daytime, like the glow of the grass and the light would go through this vom. And it was like magical. And that's the old stadium
The old
too.
stadium.
It was like, and that was one of the things I miss. That is one of the things I miss about the old stadium is like when I'm leaving the building, getting that last look at the field, because it was powerful. Like you see those, they've got these walkways like from the clubhouse and stuff, and they'll have
Yeah.
signs over it with quotes from players. And this was sort of a similar walkway, but it wasn't on the player level. Anyway, and in the old stadium, we also had like the press would eat in a press dining room that was on the level of the clubhouses, and it was decorated with hundreds of pictures and illustrations, and they would make Yankee pot roast. And when Hideki Irabu, or I don't know if it was Hideki, but Irabu was there, we had sushi for a while. And it would also, and there
Like
was a
legends.
there, and it would open up as a post-game bar for working press. And that was a long tradition previously. And so we used to go there after the game and unwind and let the crowd thin. And that was great. And sometimes players would walk by. Occasionally they'd come in. You'd bump into players more, on your way out, stuff like that. And that was nice. Every once in a while, George Steinbrenner would walk into the press dining room.
And eat the
And,
sushi.
it'd be like clamor, we're talking, and then, George walks in and it's quiet, and then he'd say, good job, or something like that, and then walk away, But it was funny because everyone's always a little scared, like, did someone do something wrong?
Yeah. When the boss walks in, this is your boss too. So you're like a
I
player. The
mean,
boss walks in.
he was the boss. There's no doubt about it. He was the boss. And one on Yogi Berra, you remember he and Yogi had falling out, and Yogi hadn't gone to Yankee Stadium for like 15 years or something, maybe longer.
I mean, I
Well,
know about it. I don't know
finally, they
about it.
finally reconciled. And on that day, I find myself in an elevator. This is the old stadium with just George and Yogi. And George is a little pissed off because I'm going down and he's going up. And somehow I'm going down first. So, so I didn't really say anything, but I was like, you know, nodding, friendly, but later on I wished I had said something like, I hope you have a perfect day, because that was the day that I think it was Dave, was that the day David Cohn threw the perfect game? Or
I mean,
Wells.
I don't know
No,
what was.
no. Wells
I
was
wasn't
Beanie
there.
Baby Day. So that was the day I think David Cohn threw the perfect.
That was 1999, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
So
David
that that's
Wells was 98,
ye-
or the other
yes.
way
That was
around.
my first year. David Wells' perfect game was my
Yeah,
first year.
yeah.
And that was just incredible. And that was Baby Day. So like
Beanie Baby Day.
it was a sellout, but half the crowd or a third had left because they were like mothers with their kids who didn't really realize there was a perfect game going on. They were there to get the Beanie Babies.
So they certainly gave you they call it maybe the greatest Yankee team of all time, if not the greatest baseball team of all time in 1998.
Yeah.
What an introduction you had to Yankee Stadium. I imagine that was it for you. They got you hooked at that point.
Yeah, I was already hooked. I mean, even if we'd, fall on our faces, and I'd still want to be there,
Right.
because I'm like the kind of fan, I'm not a fickle fan in the sense that, like, I'm a loyal fan. So, as a kid, I enjoyed like a decade, the longest decade of my life, when the Yankees weren't winning. So we won, and well, when we got to the World Series, even in '76, it was like just an incredible throw. And to see a
And
team
then
come together and develop and stuff is exciting.
right. And then of course the famous 99, 98, 99, 2000 dynasty was something
Yeah.
that you were a big part of. So on that front, from your perspective, from the angle that you had with players and fans alike, what did it feel like to be on the front lines of such a special dynasty?
Well, of course, at first you didn't really realize that quite how special it was. I mean, you did, but you didn't know. And no, it was like, first of all, it was good baseball. It was fun to watch. We would, you know, most of us in the scoreboard were baseball fans, and we loved talking about it and stuff. Um, in the early days, so 98, 99, 2000, I wasn't doing handheld camera um, hardly at all. So I would climb into a bucket and operate a camera that was on a tripod.
Oh, okay.
And so you weren't quite as close to the players, but you were right there on top of the game, and you could totally feel the energy. And the old stadium in particular was really loud because, for one, if you left your seat, you were going to miss the game because you'd get stuck in the concourse or online or whatever, and there weren't monitors all over. And in the current stadium, the concourses are open, so you can still see the field even if you're not in your seat. So people tended to stay in their seats more at the old stadium. And when something big happened and people are roaring and clapping, the stadium shook. There's no doubt about it. You would feel and it was like, whoa, it's like pandemonium.
There's
So,
a
yeah.
there's no, yeah. I mean, so there's a video on ESPN. And I don't know which year it was, but it was one of the championships they won. Yeah, there's so many different celebration videos, but you see the team come out on the field to celebrate, and there's you in your Yankee jacket out with them with a full head of hair in one of those
Nice.
clips that they have in the
Oh, cool.
the
Yeah, a lot
archive.
of that stuff I don't see, but there's a recent A-Rod documentary. Apparently, I get a lot of light in that one. So that,
I watched the
like
captain.
10 people have said something to me about it.
Oh,
So
really?
I haven't seen it yet, though. But
The
yeah, that's fun. I mean, dude, it's a thrill to be there, and you try to be in the right spot, but it's inevitable sometimes, that because I'm doing my job, network's doing their job, so I got to make sure I get the shot too. So sometimes,
right.
I don't block, I try not to block anybody, but we're all going after the same thing. So I do end up in a lot of shots. I have a pretty good collection of pictures and stuff from my friends in the photography field and fans.
Staying on the Yankees a bit, what is the coolest interaction that you've had? And the Yogi and George the Elevator is a pretty cool one, but with a player
Right. The cool.
on the team.
Okay, so let's start with Derek Jeter because uh, I went to University of Michigan, and Derek Jeter's a big Michigan fan. So
Kalamazoo.
yeah, and so we would always talk Michigan athletics. And so I had, not long, deep conversations, but a little hit and run thing there and there. And so I always had that rapport with him. And there were times he'd even unprompted say like, "What's going on with our, cagers or something, if we were struggling." Anyway, so that was fun. I mean, uh and I do remember, so starting around 2000 or 2001, we started doing post-game interview. No, earlier than that, I think. But anyway, we started doing post-game interviews after wins, and then we would show those clips before the game the next day. And I would usually shoot them. And so that was really fun because we would be in the clubhouse, guys are milling around, getting dressed, and stuff. And in those days, all the interviews happen at their lockers. And so we would sort of scope out the room, see who looked like they were almost ready to talk, or dart over there, get a little sound. But meanwhile, you're still waiting for like, Jeter or Cone or, someone who had a big game. That was a lot of fun. But then one time there was like, I was gonna ask the questions and not shoot it because they didn't have someone to do the interviews. So I
Yeah.
do remember, and this is, there were like couches there, and it was like a scrum. There were tons of media, and we're waiting for Jeter, and Jeter finally comes, and uh, and he was always really good in the press, in interview, doing interviews because he would never really get uptight, and if the same question was asked a second time, because that person hadn't been there, whatever, he was cool. He wouldn't get, you know, bitchy about it. But anyway, I remember I asked him a question. I can't remember what it was, but I'm looking at the dude and the guy's eyes, like, just sort of like kind of bore into you, but not in a threatening way, but they're like sort of put you in a little spell. I swear to God, man, it was like that, just that moment where he's looking at me and I'm asking the question, and I might have butchered the question a little bit or whatever, but the eyes, it was like, holy smoke. It was like, there was something sort of almost supernatural, or a sense of that. So anyway, I did that, that's maybe not an interact. It is an interaction, But anyway, I do remember that. That's one thing that's etched in my mind. I also remember we used to sometimes I went to spring training a couple of times before they had in-house staff to shoot everything down there. And I remember seeing Jeter down there. Like, there's this, you would walk past, like, around the stadium and you could see into the weight room a little bit. And he was like the only guy there, tired, sitting on a bench, like had just finished doing like a last lift or something. And I just remember that as like a testament to like it's not all fun and games, you got to work for it and stuff like that, and he was very dedicated. uh but as far as interactions, well, I have a favorite one about, it's brief, but Joe Torre, because there was a time when we had to have him record audio for not a radio spot, but some kind of thing we were doing. And so I was sent down to his office after a game, and it's not like I had a tape recorder and a microphone. I had a camera and I was recording it on the camera, and I had cable, and anyway. And uh you know, this is in the middle of the dynasty, and I hadn't been in his office that much. So I was a little nervous. And but he was super friendly, and he said, like, you know, thank God I have a face for radio. And I just remember that because that was like during the you know, that was that was one of the few interactions that I had directly with him. He was in those days, I didn't get in the dugout that much. I was friendly with some of the coaches, and I'd be friendly to say hello, but you didn't interact as much. Nowadays, there's a little more interaction.
Definitely interesting
Oh yeah,
to hear about those interactions, because those are the stories that are so captivating and fascinating. Those personal one-on-one
yeah. Bernie
looks.
was great. Bernie
Bernie
was
Williams.
super friendly, and I remember one time. Again, that press dining room where we would drink after the game, then you would walk up a flight of stairs to get to the street level. And sometimes the players would be leaving when you were leaving. And Bernie one time like turned to me and said, "Hey man, I see you all over the place on the field now and stuff." So that was cool. Like you're sort of like part of the team. As a young baseball fan, Greg Nettles was one of my favorite players. He was amazing third baseman, had a lot of pop, great arm, but he made so many game-saving plays, blah, blah, blah. So, and he hadn't been a regular like that often at Old Timers Day. He was there again this year, which was nice. But so he's standing behind the cage, the batting cage, and I had recently read his book, so and I'm like, but it also kind of precipitated him being traded to the Padres. I don't think necessarily that the boss was terribly happy with what was in the book. But anyway, it was an entertaining read. And I said, Greg, hey man, great to see you. Just read your book. He's like, oh, you're the one. Anyway, I just thought it was funny and witty, and he was known for his wry sense of humor. Others,
Boston like
other
it.
anecdotes will come to me probably. We have a,
I like
yeah.
that you're the one.
Oh, you're the one on the delivery, man.
When fans treat you like a celebrity, when you have that camera, how does it feel to get that sort of recognition? Because I know for us, we're like, Eric, come, we want to be filmed, we want to go on the stadium jumbotron.
Fans have, I think most fans have a good sense of humor, and that's sort of my go-to response with interactions is to like, try to have fun with it. And so even if things aren't working out, we can still have a good time. I'd like to shoot more people than I'm able to, but there's time restrictions, and now there's the
Yeah,
pitch clock and this and that.
right.
But people are so generous, like in their, they'll come up and say all kinds of like things that make you blush, like, you know, legend and, the best cameraman in New York, that kind of stuff. And it's great. I mean, who wouldn't like that? It's great. Um, but also there's like genuine friendships, that have developed. I mean, I'm pretty free with giving my contact info and stuff. And, I don't promise a shot, but like if there's you got a kid coming or there's like a big anniversary, I'll offer, So I'm in touch with a lot of the fans. I'm on a thread with two hardcore fans. It's almost too much, but no, they're great.
Yeah.
In the beginning, I didn't always do camera. Sometimes I was on sometimes I had to be TD, the technical director, and switch. And sometimes I was doing like informational graphics. But I wanted to get out of the control room. It's a little too confining. And I like interacting with the fans, the vendors, the workers. There's over 5,000 game day employees at Yankee Stadium, I believe.
Yeah.
And there's a tremendous amount of camaraderie amongst us. Yeah, no, it's great. But I mean, oh, and people will come up to me with like their 20-year-old son and they'll say, "Hey, you got John when he was 6," and they'll pull out their phone and show you a picture of the kid when he was 6. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, and I'm a visual person. I like shooting. But there's something special about when you're doing a shot live to the board, The entire arena, stadium sees it. You see through your lens the person's reaction. So you get like a jolt of energy. You get like a high. You sort of share the elation with the fan that's being shot, And with players, it's a little different because often they won't react. They're just trying to stay focused, but every once in a while they will, and that's fun too.
So one of my favorite Eric moments
Huh.
was we were at a the Legends open house one day, right? And you put us on in the Jumbotron from the Legends open house. And then that night we went to a Ranger game and you came to our seats at the Ranger game when you put us on Garden Vision, which I think is the
Nice.
perfect point to work the transition to Madison Square Garden. So you said
Yeah. Oh yeah.
you started at the Garden in 2014 and adding some more action to your busy schedule during the year to always have something new to cover, right? So being able to have the opportunity to go to more than one venue, film other teams as well. They're not introducing you with a dynasty over at MSG like they did at Yankee Stadium, but how did it feel to have that opportunity as well? What was it like? What brought that
Right.
into your life as well?
Well, first of all, that was a nice segue, Avery. Good job. Um,
Thank you.
and so yeah, going there was like huge for me. And not just because I wanted to be there, but also I wasn't getting work in the winter. So when one of my coworkers and friends, Dino Tutino, who was already at the Garden, um, brought
Yeah.
me in, got me an interview, that was huge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's probably regretted it every day since that moment because now
Why is that?
he sees me all the time. We have a friendly rivalry, and we tease each other, but we also drink together. We're pretty good. But anyway, it was huge for me to get in there because now I have year-round action. So I get the Yankees, I get everything with the Yankees, and I do pretty well at the Garden. For a while, things changed a lot there. For a while, for many years, I got 80, 90% of all sports events. And now we've just got a lot more people and different situations. So now I don't get as much, and that's, I'd like to have more, but I still get most of the Knicks and Rangers, and when we're in the playoffs, I get all of it. Uh, and, dude, it's a thrill. I used to hang out as a kid, like say 12 years old, outside the Garden waiting for autographs,
Yeah.
And I did that so much. that I got to know Clyde Frazier's driver. His name was David Baker. He'd be standing next to the Rolls Royce. We'd be bullshitting. And after a couple hours, Clyde would come out of Toots Shore in a long fur coat with a woman on each arm and and stride to the rolls. And I tell you, that's not an image that you ever forget, you know?
That's
So that
amazing.
was cool. And now I get to see Clyde just about every time the Knicks play because he's still a broadcaster. He's 80 years old. And I actually, in the 70s, when they came out, I wore Puma Clydes. Like they were the blue suede and the signature Clyde on it. And I'm not a big sneakerhead, but I love those sneakers. And they reintroduced them
Right.
like 50, 40 years later, 30 years later. So I started wearing them for all the Knick games and I would show them to Clyde and he loved it. He told me that his original deal with Puma was for $5,000 back in
$5,000.
yeah. And so I'm sure he's getting more now when they reintroduced it.
Well, I would assume so. I would hope
He's
so.
he's the sweetest guy. He is so great. I see him with fans every day. He just and he's genuinely happy to be there, and to so it's a thrill for me every day to, to be on the floor talking little hoops with my Knicks, like and all the other, photographers and trainers and stuff that are and court personnel and like score PA announcers, clock guys, like Dwayne and Roger, I was anyway, it's fun. Yeah. And then I mean the Rangers is super exciting too. And I mean things, change but you get, fairly close because I'll be at the gate when they're coming out to take the ice and stuff.
2014, were you there before or after they were in the cup final?
So I was there after. I started like
Oh, so they
November.
almost introduced you with
I
at least
know.
some sort of championship run.
Good. Yeah, good. Yeah, I started like in like late October or early November. I think it was mid-November of 2014. So barely there in 2014.
But they were still probably
And
buzzing from what happened the year before.
yeah, we made the final. We made the semifinals, I think, the next year, and so that was exciting.
The many experiences you've had throughout the years, there's a lot of great people you've been able to meet along the way. What are the greatest relationships you've formed from your experiences as this videographer, this tattered videographer that you are?
In the stadium, the the scoreboard control room is on the same in the same area as the broadcast booth. So we see the Yes broadcast team all the time. And
Yeah.
so um I've gotten, to know a lot of those guys. And so on the player side, I mean, Paul O'Neill and David Cohn, John Flaherty, like, now they're like friends, acquaintances. You'll chat, you'll talk. We know each other's names. I'll bullshit Paul about his golf game or try and get some of that Warrior IPA out of him. Coney,
Right. Right.
Coney, Coney's great. He'll like, I'll have real like baseball conversations with him, and he's funny. And he also rides the train home. Well, he doesn't live in New York anymore, but when he did, he lived in Chelsea, and I'd often occasionally be on the same train as him, and we'd have long conversations. One time, my daughter had been to the game, so the three of us got to talk Coney up. So that's fun. Bernie, like, he comes by and he we always have a moment. And I love shooting him. I shot him doing the national anthem with his guitar
Right. Yeah.
several occasions. And one time, I forget what the event was, but he was in center field and I had him playing there. And that's just fun, man. I got a ton of respect for him. And I know Richie Kanata, who's his music director and was the first saxophone player for Billy Joel. And so we have that little connection too. I've never seen Bernie's classical guitar performance yet, though. I got to do that. That's something I need to do. I do have Paul O'Neill's number, but you know, I'll only probably text him once during the winter. It's just been really a joy for me and like a blessing, Like sometimes things, yeah, you got to be good, but you also got to be lucky. And I feel like I've been, pretty lucky to get into this line of work, and I try not to take it for granted. Um, I think relationships are important, so I try to treat people with respect, humor too, but you know, you just gotta be aware. All that stuff makes a difference, I think, is to be diligent but considerate, and enthusiasm. There's a place for enthusiasm too. Like some people in this business sometimes get beaten down by the routine or whatever. But, I think it's important to keep the perspective that, you're doing something that's, maybe, yeah, that's important, but it also, you know, you're lucky to be able to be doing it because you could have some other job that's not nearly as gratifying and rewarding. So never forget that, and that'll kind of keep your positive energy going.